So, Kawinganawalomwa, Nindashinzi Peshoat, Wak Suzanne. And it's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to the 4th annual Munsee-Delaware Story Evening. NEEKAAWA KIHTAACHIIMUWAK WULAAKWUNUWII. This evening they tell stories. This online gathering is one of the annual gatherings that take place on Lunaape lands, or with online gatherings are at least hosted on Lunaape, along with the annual Munsee Language and History Symposium that we hold every autumn. Past gatherings, along with recordings from those gatherings, can be found at the link that's in the chat right now. This spring, for the first time, we'll also be hosting a one-day Wunami Language and History Symposium on the 4th of April, and I hope that many of you will be able to join in person or online for that gathering. Before I ask the presenters to introduce themselves in a way that seems good to them, let me first say thank you to those who have made it possible for this gathering to take place. Maria Mercedes Tuya, who organized the Zoom and will be managing the slides and video, and Melissa Morton, without whose organizational skills and infinite patience these annual events would not be possible. We'll begin our story evening with Kristin Jacobs, and she may be joined by her son, Barry Stonefish, followed by a presentation by Ian McCallum, John Nicholas, and Ella Johnston. So let's start the introductions with Ian, John, and Ella, and then turn to Kristin and maybe Barry, if he's there, so that we can go right into their story. Anishik, Wemawen, and Ian, could I ask you to begin the introductions? And I'll pin
Sure.
people. Okay.
Sure, Nishik, Suzanne. Malik Piska Kawamwen, Ni Dashinzi Wabanach, Ni Nonjay Nalahii, Chuk Nawiki on Berry Public Library. Naawehleewak Dr. Class. So my name is Ian McCallum. I'm from Munsee-Delaware Nation. I'm coming to you live from the Berry Public Library in beautiful Barrie, Ontario. I'm going to pass it over to my good friend, John.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Nicholas. I'm a member of the Munsee-Delaware Nation, Turtle Clan. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you this evening and share a few of the things that we've developed over the last few years. To give you a little bit of background, is that okay for me to go ahead into that, Ian, or you want me to wait for Ella?
Maybe we should just do all the introductions and then we'll
Let's
come
do
back
the
around to
introductions
that.
first,
Does
and
that
then
sound
I
okay?
can go into that. Yes.
Okay. Anishik, John. And Ella?
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm also from the Munsee-Delaware Nation. I guess, John, you can go into what you were going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, to go and give a little bit of background to the story that you're going to hear this evening. As a child growing up, one of the most important lessons that we were taught was this, that if you lose all you have, your wealth, your country, or your hopes, but may keep a secure knowledge of yourself and your worth as a link in the chain of life, you have a rock to build upon. If everything is given to you, wealth, position, fame, and power, but you have not the anchor of your heritage, you are as an empty canoe upon the waters of life. It's in that spirit that the lesson of this story was born and comes to you this evening. It's my hope that you walk away from this kind of recharged in a way to think back to the stories that you've heard as children, and hopefully can bring those to the forefront and share those with us. So that's a little bit of the background of this story.
Anishik, John, it's a really good way to open. I'm going to invite Kristin to introduce herself, and then we'll come back round for the next story.
Kawinganawalomwa and shihsuwanakuw, Kristin Jacobs, Shinzion, Shook and Hilanixion, Ni Namanitoi, Shinzion, Loanach, and Ochque, Nunjiiyayuw, Eelunaapeewi Lahkeewiit. My English name is Kristin Jacobs, and my spirit name is Northwind. And I have my son Barry here too. You can say hello.
Hello.
Were we just going to go right into the story, Susan?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
And I think Maria, you're sharing the slides. Is that right? Yeah, there we go. So you could go maybe right to the third slide, please. There we go. Good.
Okay, so this is a story called Andapum Chatlayang Lakehead Shkolikon. And it's a story that I wrote in, I think I was in our third year of the Indigenous Language Instructor Program at Lakehead. And we had a group of students from our community, 5 of us, that had attended school there 4 summers, learning how to teach our language as a second language. And one of our assignments was to write a story. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to write about, I wanted something that I was going to be able to possibly use in my teaching, and did a lot of kind of talk, like everyday talk, like how a student might tell me about their weekend or a trip that they went on. So I have the story here. And I'll just start by reading the story in Munsee, and then I'll go back through it and kind of share the translation to it. You want to switch the slide? Okay. So my acknowledgements are Anishik to my Lenape language teacher, Diane Snake, and to my Lakehead language instructor, Dr. John O'Mara, for their guidance and help in completing this short story. I also have Anishik Nikuk, Nakaguma Nuichumuk. Thank you to my mom. She's always helping me. I give thanks to my teacher, Diane. She is our first speaker of our language, and she's been working with a group of ladies for the last 10 years or so. And we worked with her. It started out as a program for our community members, and it had started out with 21 participants, and I had joined a year into the program, and there were 6 left at that time. So it was a really big commitment to, I guess for some people, kind of put your life on hold and really dive into the language and be able to sit with our speaker daily. And then be able to go to school in the summer in July. The first 2 summers, we just went, the students. There was myself and 3 other ladies and another male, Lyle. And the 3rd summer, Diane came with us and she stayed with some of the ladies. I'd always brought my children with me, and my mom would take a month off work at that time so that she could come and watch my kids for me. I was the only one with really small children at that time. But we really enjoyed having our teacher there with us the 3rd and 4th summers, and I was able to go through my story with her, and she would make corrections and tell me where I needed work. And we're also thankful to have Dr. John O'Mara as our one of our instructors for the linguistic part of the language. So we were really grateful to our community for encouraging us in learning our language and encouraging us to become teachers. So I'm a teacher today at Naahii Ridge Elementary in Ridgetown, where the students from our community attend. And I teach grades 1 through 8. And we also have our language in our high school program and the kindergarten program in our community and our early years Head Start programs. So I'm going to go into the story. You can go to the next slide. Haashniipnoe and the Equishgolion, Dalamasina and the Kichi Pepe Takwik. Ninoham alumso and the Alokat Gwit Kishok. Naskahanjo Shneepui and the Sokalong the Shinzi, Inawak Berry Stonefish. Niha Delnapawi wak Wimbut Dind Heekdom. Eelunaapeewi Lahkeewiit wunjiiyayuwak dami minzi wichjau. Ni guk kwachi hilanikso, nakashinzo loanachen ochgwe, inawak Kristin Jacobs. Ni guk hawa sheshko holoas. Ni lona datna and kichi pepe takwik le. Guk shkolikon au, al katanita hilaniksit wak akakinget. And amwawi Niipaahum gishiki. Iasqua alumsiangua nilona namawa latna ali aanihkwaachiimuwak. Naljin lapichknawa lomwa ni josamak wak neeka matit. Ni gukduk walaskani tach tikal ahakwingo mehmalawi tasikil wak pasha bambilak. Nuichamau nachismus Jacob peep in the minno mehmalawi tasikil. Ta ali nakwakil katapatak. And the shayachan nilona alumi latna. Nal enda ni bunga and the kichi pepe takwik. Dil chalachna ich. Ni guk duk ni shachkamau dil chalachna ich. Shayawi kishkwik and the pumchatlayan Michigan tele. Michigan hotanji kanang atau. Gata gila Kmart, al kahanayan khali shilpil ali anji katamon. Namahlawawak ich WWE kwakchi nakasak. Pitat ich namahlaman kwak Jacob. Guilahna al kata namitsiana Grayling, Michigan tele. Namahlawawak nishuak kwachi nakasak wak Jacob mahlawawal kalshal. Nalguilahna Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Nigukwak ninoham nakawa ahashta pumchalawak. Gutashta hakalakika Sault Ste. Marie and the Ayang. Nalgukatatam pizzash dinalihna. Nilona jiwa sanitna. Ayaska dohki lawana kitayapaya. Nalkishkwik dilchalatna kito taning tele. Naminal khwali bisel sipowol wak kwinawangakil. Benina wawak mitkwak ahasak. Ni gukam li tahaw tasa a na wawana namoso wak makwo. Nilona guilakna wunj alachi mayang ich. Niwak Jacob gedak gilachna. Bisang dakpina. Kwaikishkwik mocha awan yon tele. Jacob was shaipa malaweso. Gukwak no hum pamisoak. Nalguilachna wawa. Namitsina subway kwachmang tele. And ami minzak malawasitit. Ni guk o kikamalawasimo ich nakash. Nuingausina ha. Nilona giskoawana whiskey josamak. Benakawash kahanjoshak. Nilona dalamasina wawa. Niwak Jacob mokawina galang tele. Ni dohkiwa guk kuchimolak. Kteekhiikeew. Iach lita how tasa a nawawana namoso. Ni noham duk kteekhiikeew. Nal guk na wawo moso. Namoos mitso mi haskul pamichi aning. Namoos now kona wak pamata kilau kopi tele. Magutak hawiwi namoso. Wena piskeka wakuk o nilona wena anda kichi pepe takwik batna. Now au kteekhiikeew lino. Nawawi don wena anda kichi pepe takwik batna. Nishashta hakala kika eyeng. Nilona jiwasani na shuk walalindamang. Namahlamenan michwakin nal dulchalachna lake hedge goli ganang. Nawiki na ich yontele wunj gut kishok, watmaguk mawish golit. Niech dam a mi minzuish goli ganang, and Anita Heleniksin, wagata now al howi josamak. Gukich watamalokau nakash, nilona yontele. Lapich wikaying Sandy Lake House. Jacob Witapo Mawel no mo Watamani Lona Shkoli Ganang Datna. And a Pamisiang Whiskey Wikayang Jacob O. Mahani Lona Wikayang Gata no Ham Wikit. Jacob Mechhakwilo Mawel Wama Oan. Matani Nawawi Ton Nilona Ich Nawingau Sina Watama Yontele. Nawawi Ton Al Kahanayan Whiskey Josamak Wakume da na Lake Helen and Mawelatit Wakela Ahwalak and Akichi Papatakweek. Now if you want to go back to slide 3, I believe. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you could go ahead to 5. Okay, so the translation, Hashni Panoi, every summer and Ekwish Golion, when school's finished, Dalamasina and the Kichi Papatakwik. We leave for Thunder Bay. Ninoham alumso and alokat gut kishok. My grandma takes off 1 month of work when we go. So like I was saying, my story is from my son Barry's point of view, as if he's writing the story about when we go to Lakehead every summer. You can go to the next slide. Nashkahanjo Shnipui and Sokalang Dashinzi. My name is the little boy who stands in the rain. Eelunaapeewi Berry Stonefish, or you can say Berry Stonefish. Niipaahum wakwimbat din hikdom. I am Lunaape and I am 10 years old. Eelunaapeewi Lahkeewiit wunjiiyayuwak dami Munsee week chow. I'm from Delaware Nation and I'm Wolf Clan. My mom is trying to speak her language. Nakashinzo loanachen ofkwa, Kristin Jacobs. Her name is Northwind, or you can say Kristin Jacobs. Nigukawashashko haloas. My mom is a teacher. Nilona dachna and akichi pepe takwik le. We go to Thunder Bay. Guk shkulikan au, where my mom goes to school, Alkatanita Helenikwachiimuwak akakingat, so that she can speak good Delaware and teach. And amwawi Niipaahum gishiki. So when it was July, or in this case, amwawi Niipaahum honeybee moon, gishiki, I was born. Iasqua alumsiangua. Before we leave, Nilona namawelachna eli anji katman. So before we leave, we all gather for my birthday. Nalzin lapich kanawaloma ni josamakwak nik elango matit. I say goodbye to my friends and my family. Ni gukduk walaskanach tikel ahakwingol. My mom tells me to pack my clothes, Malawita sikil wak pasha pambilak, my toys, and bring some books. Nuichama Nachismus Jacob, I helped my little brother Jacob, peep in the middle, maawehleewak ta aanihkwaachiimuwak kteekhiikeew. So I helped my little brother Jacob pick out some toys that he likes that he wants to bring. And the shayachan nilona alumi lahna. We are going to leave first thing. Na enda nipang and a kichi papa takwik dilcha lahna itch. So in this summer, we're going to drive to Thunder Bay. Ni guk duk, ni shakmau dilcha lahna itch. My mom says it's going to take 2 days to drive there. Shayawi kishkwik and a pumchatlayan or Pumchatlayang, Michigan delay. On the first day, we drive through Michigan. Michigan, Huatanjikanang Atao. So Michigan is in the United States. Gatagila Kmart, where we want to stop at Kmart, or I want to stop at Kmart. Al Kahanayan Huali Shilpo, because I have lots of money. Ali Anji Katumwan, because from my birthday. Namahlawawak itch. WWE Kwachi Nakasuk. I'm going to buy WWE wrestlers. Pita itch Namahlaman Quack Wunj Jacob. I might buy something for Jacob. Guilachna al Kata Namitsiana Graylung, Michigan Tele. We stop and eat at Grayling, Michigan. Namahlawawak Nishuak Quack Chinakasuk. I buy 2 wrestlers, while Jacob Mahlawawal Kalshul, and Jacob buys cars. Nalguilachna, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Next, we stop at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Nigukwak ninoham NEEKAAWA Aahaasuwi Pumchalawak. So my mom and my grandma, they take turns driving. Gutash Tahakalaki Sault Ste. Marie. So it's 6 o'clock and ayang, like when we get to Sault Ste. Marie. Nalguk katatam pizzash dinalina. My mom got pizza for dinner. Nilona jiwasanina. We were tired. Ayaski doki lawana kitayapaya. So we have to wake up early and leave in the morning. Nalkishkwig dilchalachna kito tanning tile. That day we drive through Canada. Naminal Huali Bisel. I see lots of lakes, Sipowal rivers, Wakwinawungekil, and mountains. Beni Nawawak, Meetquakwak Aahaasuwi. And I also see trees and crows. Nigukumli Tahau, Tasa'a Nawawana. My mom says maybe we'll see Namuso Wak Makwo. Maybe we'll see a moose or a bear. Nilona Guilachna Wunj Alahii Mayangich. We stopped to rest. Niwak Jacob Gatata Kilahda. Me and Jacob run. Bisang Dapina. We're at a lake. Kwai Kishkwik Mocha Awanyon Tule. On this day it's really foggy. Jacob Washaipa Maloiso. Jacob plays along the shore. Gukwak no hum pamiswak. And my mom and grandma are walking. Nalguilachna Wawa. Next we stop in Wawa. Namitsina Subway Kwachamung Tile. We eat Subway outside and Ami Minzak Malawasiti at the kids park. Niguk O. My mom says, Kika Malawasina ich nachgash. You can play for a little while. Noingao Sina ha. We had fun. Nilona Giskawawana Wuski Josamak. And we met some new friends. Banakawash Gahanjoshak. And they were little boys too. Nilona Dalamasina Wawa. Then we leave Wawa. Niwak Jacob Mokawikna Galang Tule. Me and Jacob fell asleep or go to sleep in the car. Nidoki Wakuk Kuchimulak. I woke up and my mom said, Kteekhiikeew, take a picture. Iachli tahau tasa on now awanan namoso. She still thinks we're gonna see a moose. Ni noham duk kteekhiikeew. My grandma says My grandma tells me, take a picture. Nal guk winawawal muso. Then my mom saw a moose. The moose mitso michasko pamichi aning. The moose was eating grass along the road. The moose now gonna walk pamata kilo kopitale. The moose saw us and then ran in the bush. Magatak hawiwi namoso. And I didn't get a picture of the moose. Wena piskaka wakuk o nilona wena and the kichi papa takwik batna. It was almost evening and my mom said, we're almost to Thunder Bay. Now our huchikeew lino. I see the sleeping giant. Noawi ton wena and the kichi papa takwik batna. I know that we are almost to Thunder Bay. Nishash tachakalakika ayang. It's 7 o'clock when we get there. Nilona jiwasanikna shukwalalindamang. We are tired, but we're happy. Namatluminan michwakan. We buy food, nal dilchalakna lakehead kanang. And then we drive to Lakehead. Nuikina itchiontile. We'll live here. Wunj gut kishok for 1 month watama guk mowi shkoli while my mom goes to school. Niich dam ami menzui shkoli kan and Niipaahum. I'll go to the little kids school where I'll speak language, walk, gatanawao howi josamak, and I'll get to see my old friends. Guk ich watamaloka nakash nilona yontile. My mom will be very busy while we're here. Lapich wikayang Sandy Lake House. We're gonna stay in Sandy Lake House again. Jacob witapo mawo nochmo watama nilona shkoli ganang datna. Jacob will stay with my grandma while we go to school. And the pumsiang whiskey wikayang. Jacob oh. So when we walk into our new house, Jacob says, Maha nilona wikayang. This isn't our house. Gatanoham wikit. I want grandma's house. Jacob mechhakwilo mawo wema wen. Jacob misses everyone, or Jacob already misses everyone. Matani, but not me. Noawi ton nilona ich nuingao sina watama yontele. I know that we're gonna have fun while we're here. Noawi ton al kahanayan whiskey josamak. I know that I'll have new friends. Wagume dachna Lake Helen and Maawehleewak, and we always go to Lake Helen powwow. Wakela ahwalak and kichi pepetakwik, and I just really love Thunder Bay. So that was a story, and that story was written, I believe, in 2018. So it's been some time. Barry was 10 years old at the time, and he's here today. He'll say hello in a minute. So Kwaiki squeak today, ni mechki shkolikani eelohkeewak in Lakehead tele. I'm all done my schoolwork at Lakehead. Ni dindaloke Naahii Ridge Elementary, Lichtown ang tele. I work at Naahii Ridge Elementary in Ridgetown. Kiihtaachii minzana Niipaahum and I teach our children to speak Delaware. Ni shkoli eelohkeewak and my schoolwork. So this was something that I made when we were at Lakehead. It says akakingatit eli pamausiang. And akakingatit is like the ones who are our teachers, ali pamausiang for life. So I kind of did it in the shape of our medicine wheel, and that starts at the red katami minshana. So those are our babies. Katami minzana, our children, in the yellow. Kochana, kukana, those are our parents. and kumohomsana and kokmana are our grandparents. So that was a little kind of something that we did. One how Barry, Kwaiki Squeak. So this is Barry today. Let's see. You want to say hello, Barry?
Hi.
Barry among Kpeekwao. He plays loud music. NEEKAAWA, he's a musician. And Barry within Teekdom Nisha, he's 17.
Turning 18.
Bahut Hashtahanika, almost 18. Oh, you can go to the next one. NEEKAAWA. So this is us today. Jacob within Teekdom Gutanika, he's 11. And yeah, so they've definitely grown a lot since our Lakehead days. And next one ha Jack Bean, or Enoch Jacob. I was thinking of some of the things that have changed in the story. We have July as Amwawi Kishok, or Amwawi Niipaahum, honeybee moon. Today we call it Lalokilashi Kishok, the raspberry moon. So that might be something that I change. But yeah, I'm really happy to have this story because it's a good reminder of the, I guess, my language journey, how I became a teacher. My children were involved, my family was involved, the community was involved. And I feel like we had a really good support system for wanting to become speakers. I've been at my school now, I think since 2015. And they kind of slowly took time away from me. When I first got hired, it was only supposed to be 4 days a week. And then it was 4.5, and then I was full time. And so it just like slowly took away my time with Diane, but I still ask her lots of questions today. I'm really happy that she can text and email and do all that, and we're just really fortunate to still have her. She's still working with the ladies from when I first started. We all have different roles in our community. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, did you want to say hello?
No, I think the story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anishik, Kristin. If people have questions, maybe they could raise their hand and then I can maybe invite them to unmute and share. Can I ask a tiny question? Kristin, one of the things that I've always thought was so interesting is that, you know, your language, you teach people of all ages, but at the school, you teach the youngest. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about teaching the youngest ones, because that seems to be so important, because that's where the kind of the seeds of language are planted for the next generation. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
So my youngest grades, my grades 1 to 3, I see them twice a week, and I focus a lot on singing. We don't do a whole lot of word work, like being able to read words and things like that. We focus more on speaking, and once they get to grades 4 through 8, then I can see them 3 to 4 times a week. And some of those classes are anywhere between 40 minutes to 60 minutes. And sometimes they even work it out where I'll get them for a double period one year. And that's always great, because then we have lots of time. It don't feel like we just start something and then it's time to go. But yeah, I love what I do. I teach our language, and then plus I'm also in our kindergarten room. Our students go to school about 10 to 15 minutes outside of our community. And we have our own kindergarten. So when students come to me in grade 1, the students from our kindergarten will have had language for the past, like since they were in daycare. A lot of them start right 2 years old, and then I get them when they're 5 or 6. So they've had a few years of language, and then we kind of give the students the option of whether they want to take French or English or French or Delaware as their second language. And that option is open to everybody. So I always get a few students from our school's kindergarten program join in. So we kind of all learn, they have to learn together. And I feel like that really builds bridges for the future with our students. And yeah.
Jake, any questions or anybody want to comment?
Hey,
Um,
Kristin.
oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you so much, Kristin. That was lovely. Hi, Barry. Good to see you again.
Someone else.
I'm out.
All right, that's all.
Hey,
Miles.
it's Stephanie. I just wanted to say thank you. Like, this is my first time at the story time, and that was really awesome. That was intense, and I really enjoyed that. And I just want to say thank you. Anishik.
Yeah.
I like the way you tell the story from your son's point of view. Like, it's really interesting to think about writing a story where it's not coming from the usual spot. That adds to it. Lisa Webster?
So thank you for the story. This is fun. I'm just sort of listening and trying to get the language and the vowels. And I was wondering, is Lunaape very close to Cree at all? Is it very similar, or is it very, very different? Because it has the same little bit of a feel to it. So I was wondering if it was very similar at all.
We do share some similar words, like I would say more closer to Anishinaabemowin, but
Okay, yeah.
when we went to school, we had to go way up north, 18 hours away drive. And a lot of the students were speakers from there, and some of them had a mix of Ojibwe and Cree. I think they called it Oji Cree or something. I think, yeah, we have some similar words, like we say Dishinzi, they say Dishnakas, Amok, Amik, we say Mach for bear, Makwa. There's lots of little, I feel like it's the same sounds almost.
Yeah, it's very similar from what I've learned from both Anishinaabe and a little bit of Cree sounding. So it's, but as to say, it's very different than, say, the Mohawk that I'm learning as well. So it's very interesting.
Oh yeah, that is very different.
Yeah, very different. Anyway, thank you for putting this together. I'm very much enjoying it and very appreciative.
Anybody else? I'm going to ask a really trivial question. Do you have a sense, Kristin, of some of the reasons why Niipaahum has come to be called instead Raspberry Moon? Like, what was the thinking?
I believe they were based on the moons of our big house back in the 1700s. And then some of them, I guess, were more suited to, I guess, our community today and what's happening during those times. Yeah, because there's a few moons that, like, I remember Wapsui Lawi Wak Mihaskul Niipaahum, the grass and geese moon. Was April, and we say Chwali Kishok now. Kishok also means a month, moon, and sun. And I believe March was Aahaasuwi Niipaahum, crow moon, and we say Asinaminji Kishok, maple syrup moon. So yeah, there's a few that have changed for the good. But I think using either or is totally like it really depends on where you live and what's happening in that time, I feel like.
Anybody else? If not, maybe we'll go ahead on to the next group of storytellers and just say thank you to Kristin, and there'll be more time for discussion later. Ian, do you want to begin? And John and Ella will join you.
Certainly. Thanks, Suzanne, and thanks, Kristin and Barry, for starting us off. I appreciate the change in month for maple syrup moon, as I'm busy boiling on a semi-daily basis right now, so it kind of fits for where I am. So I appreciate that. It's my pleasure to introduce a really collaborative effort from Munsee-Delaware Nation between myself, John, Nicholas, and Ella Johnston to sort of focus on a story, a John story, and to translate that into Munsee, but also to bring the story to life, both in terms of visual, but in terms of audio. And it's sort of a longer story in terms of documenting stories from the Munsee-Delaware Nation. So it's my pleasure to introduce Wangoma Shayawikon, or The Kiss of the First Snow, which is a story that John Nicholas wrote. And again, just highlighting the fact that this is a collaborative effort between myself, Ella, and John. It gives me the opportunity to, as a historian, to work with the language, because I think that there's the language, culture, and history of the Munsee people are so much entwined that you can't just separate them, as much as oftentimes you're working with one more than the other. So this story gave me the opportunity to focus on improving my language skills, and gave me a reason to say no to other work. Well, sorry, a very passive no to other work from the community. But maybe I'll ask John or Ella to step in just to talk a little bit about, when the story first started, or their experiences with the work as a team.
Ella, do you want to go ahead and say something here?
Sure. So I'm the one who illustrated the story. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was contacted by Ian. But him and John have been working on the story quite a few years, I think, before that. So all the illustrations are my doing. Yeah, I can go into more of that if you want, but I used watercolor and then I scanned it digitally. So what you'll see now would be like the digital copies of the watercolor. I picked watercolor because I personally enjoy watercolor, and I felt like at the time it's what I was best at. And after reading the story, I felt like the material fit better than doing something digital, something a bit more hands-on, not as something that was a bit more personal, I guess. So yeah. John, if you want to go.
No, just to say that this is my first opportunity to meet Ella, and I want to thank you for your contribution. I think your illustration adds so much to the spirit of the story. So thank you, Nishi.
And thank you for letting me be a part of your story.
So as Ella mentioned, that the timeline has sort of been inclusive of sort of the last 5 years in terms of translating the story. So I had the pleasure to meet John during our online Lunaape language classes that my good friend Karen Moscow ran via Zoom during the pandemic. And I made the mistake of mentioning that I was translating some of the stories from my extended family, the Logan family. And John mentioned that he might have a story that I would want to translate. And I think I've mentioned before in this public space that I was kind of expecting a one-page story at most, but the story was in excess of 10 pages typed. And for a second language learner and speaker such as myself, that's a fairly daunting task. Whether you're asking me to translate that into Munsee, or whether you're asking me to translate into a different language, that I realized was going to take me some time. So I accepted the offer, and it took me about 2 years to translate that, in between being a father, being a parent, working a full-time job and things like that, and other, community needs. So I worked diligently on that for a couple of years with the translation. And as Ella mentioned, that she came in about 2023 to offer the visuals of that. So she had to work with me at a distance as well, because I live in Barrie, which is 3 hours away from where Ella is, and I live thousands of kilometers away from where John lives. So we're all working at a distance. We're not actually on the community working together. This is also somewhat of a challenge because Munsee, Delaware does not have any first language speakers. We have people who are very active and interested in the language, but we're a community of second language learners. So there's not that support network for people to support in terms of talking the story out loud. In 2024, we reached out to Learning Bird, and Karen always asked me, so we should really be sort of outsourcing some of the work that we just can't get to because we were always so busy. And so I finally took her up on her offer, albeit after she passed, to work with this company called Learning Bird, which is very active within Canada, working with Indigenous languages. So they support Indigenous communities with bringing their languages to either recording, to provide the visuals, but to do that film work and documentation that I don't have the time, and we may not have those abilities in the community. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that the story was brought to the community in 2025. So it was introduced back in December of 2025 at Munsee-Delaware Nation. So Ella was there. John zoomed in from the Netherlands. We also had Vanessa, who's on the call tonight, teach us some quill work, and among other people, my sister, my cousin, we were all there to offer up our sort of research updates to the community in terms of what we've been finding out in terms of wampum, the big house, and other things that are important to Munsee, Delaware. So that's sort of the timeline compressed. I could give you the minute by minute of me sitting in my basement with my cat, trying to translate and going between different sources to try and take the words that are on the paper and put them into the language. But what I think is most important is that what we're doing is we're trying to take things that are in English and bring them back into the language in whatever way we can as second language speakers and learners. Next slide, please. And there's a beautiful picture of us all with our smiling faces. Again, that was in December for our sort of our year-end get together for story night, our story weekend, I guess I should say, but also our history update. Next slide, please. You're missing the big TV that's at the front here. So John was able to zoom in and check out the action from a distance as well. So I shared this, I think, last year, but I thought I'd share it again in terms of the translation process for those who are interested in language learning and sort of my process when faced with a 10-page story. Most of what I apply is things that I've had to learn in elementary and secondary school. My parents believed in language learning, so much so that my parents forced me to take grade 13 French all the way through. I was a terrible language student. I tried my best, but there was absolutely no way I was going to be considered a fluent bilingual English-French person in Canada. But language always interested me. And so hearing the language when I was a kid living at Munsee, and then coming back to it as a young adult, I sort of applied the same techniques that I witnessed my mother as an ESL teacher do when she was teaching English as a second language out at Base Borden. So part of the translation process was working with the nouns. The nouns are the simple thing for me, right? Whether I'm translating it from English to French in my job, but those are things that I look for because they're easy wins. And then I move on to the subjects and the verbs, and then I try to piece together that because they're more difficult, right? They're going to take some time. I highlighted John's work, so I printed it all off and essentially laid out in front of me, and I highlighted sentences that were going to be a challenge, because in English we tend to be very wordy, and we have a different structure in terms of our sentences or things that we probably wouldn't say in the Munsee language. And so synonyms became my best friend. So looking up on the internet for synonyms for words in English that might be close in Munsee or have a workaround. I always thought of it as a workaround. So that's something that I chose to do in terms of the translations. I did have to rewrite pieces in English, but I tried to stay true to the story because the story is the most important piece. That's something that John created, and I didn't want to deviate too much. So that was part of the process as well. And as Kristin mentioned, there's some support materials involved. So that would include the O'Meara Dictionary, Goddard's work, God's Goddard, and then of course the Ministry of Education documents that are printed here in Ontario. It's a wonderful document. It's as old as the hills, but it's on my shelf and it's a good piece. And again, I think it's the piece that I'm learning, maybe as I approach well over middle age now, is that it's a marathon and it's not a race. So if you get frustrated, you kind of put it to one side and then you come back to it again. I don't think I would have had that patience if I were in my 20s or 30s. It was like, oh, I got to get it done. I got to get it done. But you know what? It takes time, and it's important. And I think that only comes with being, having matured a little bit, I guess, over my years, to understand that you do need a break sometimes when you're doing the translation work. Next slide, please. The voice that you'll hear is mine. I apologize for that. There's a couple of thoughts that go through my head every time that I record something in the language. One, listening to Kristin, I just love the stamina of listening to her speak, because she can go through the entire story and she has the stamina to keep going with every sentence that she does, every page that she read earlier. I don't have that stamina. I need a break. So you're going to hear a lot of breaks in the recording, because as a speaker, I'm also going back and having to re-record, and it was all done off of an iPhone, right? So I didn't have a professional speaking studio or anything like that. They didn't send me a microphone, but they judged that the iPhone, the voice messaging would work just fine. But because I don't have the stamina of other speakers, I had to record them in sentence blocks and then go back and re-record if I put the wrong inflection on the wrong double vowel. So it got me thinking about what if we could go back in time and hear the tone and intonation of a real speaker, like back 200 years ago? What would it sound like? And I can't answer that, but it does get me thinking, going, I'm listening to me and I sound monotone, but I'm sure it wasn't like that, right? And I think about other languages and how the tone flows and there's this beautiful sound to it. And I'm going, man, you don't have that. But it does get me thinking as a speaker and a learner. I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I apply colonial problem solving. I shouldn't be doing that to an Indigenous language. Sadly, that's the public school system in me, right? That's what I was taught. So I tend to apply it when I do language work. It's going to take me a lifetime to leave that. But I also believe that there are some language strategies that are valuable that I learned along the way. There's considerations to it, less so as you get older. I think you start to leave this behind, but for young people, there's the considerations of being shy and anxious, fearing judgment when you speak the language or when you try and translate the language. And it's that freedom to go against the rules, I think, as you get older or you get to more mature, or you get to, your shoulders get a little bit thicker, where you go, you know what, I'm just going to do this because, that's the only way I'm going to learn, right? If I make a mistake, then that's fine, but I got to try my best. There is that historical trauma of being and speaking that I want to acknowledge. So the intergenerational issues where our language was not allowed in schools, right, actively. So I do want to acknowledge that piece. And I always come back to this: if you speak your language, if you're actively trying to learn it, read it, hear it, and work in the language, I always consider it a strength. And if you're doing that, it's also a political strength, and people will view it as political, that it's a strength that that you're trying your very best. And I approach that with my own family. So my kids are not fluent, they'll pick up the language, but I think I'm doing a better job than what my parents did or what my mom was able to do for me. So within each generation, the exposure to language, the exposure back to the Munsee history and the culture, I think as the next generation after me is going to do a way better job because they've had that exposure. I'm going to say I've got some progress as a writer and speaker. I wish that I could do it full time. That's just simply not possible at this stage in my life. Hopefully when I retire, I'll be able to devote more time to the language. And I think that would be much more helpful for my progress. But I have a responsibility to family. I have a responsibility to the community and sort of working in other fields, as mentioned with history and culture, that can drag you away from language at different times when maybe you should be, put your nose in the language dictionary. But that comes with, responsibility for other needs. Next slide, please. Well, so these are my thoughts about the process that John and Ella and I undertook. I loved the fact that we were able to collaborate. So I got to meet a new friend in John, a new friend in Ella, people I hadn't actually known or met before. I met Ella and John in language, but I'd never met them before that because we're all members at large, we're off reserve members. And to be honest with you, it felt like old times when I was working with my colleague Karen. Right, and Karen was a friend where I could speak language, I could text language, we could work on things together. And since she passed, you're sort of like you're floating on your own. But this story sort of brought me back, where I had the opportunity to work with the language again. I could hear Karen's voice behind me or on my shoulder while I was doing things. But I got to actively collaborate with 2 other community members. The whole goal is to share these stories as well. So whether it's my own family stories that we've translated in the past, the goal is to share them with the community at large, and that we have a repository of stories to share and to teach and bolster our language program at Munsee-Delaware. It got me thinking about my role with the Munsee language, and as I mentioned, I tend to get pulled in different directions willingly. It's not against my will, but what's my end goal with the Munsee language in terms of myself? What am I going to do to improve my own skills? The documentation piece is ongoing and it won't stop for us as a community. We're also thinking about protocol in terms of story sharing and when to share a story and when we can share those stories. And that's that piece of ultimate the responsibility that we have when it comes to if John's going to share a story with me, we go through a process where we're all well informed and we're all understanding of what the end goal is for the story. So those are just some of the thoughts about the process. I know I've shared those in the past, and some things are a bit new. Maybe what I'll do is I'll share the future work. Yeah, that's fine, Ray. You can go to that slide. That's the slide. So the future work probably for this fall at Princeton or in the 5th annual Munsee-Delaware Story Night will be, and many have probably already seen this a bit, but there's a future story that involves my great uncle Arnold, who fought in World War I. It is a nonfiction story. Because John's story taught me a lot about translating, the English version of this story will actually be completed first. While I go back and translate into the Munsee language. It's going to be, Learning Bird is currently doing the film work in and around the metropolis of St. Thomas in southwestern Ontario, Munsee-Delaware Nation, and other places where Arnold lived, to try and provide that audio visual of sort of following him on his way to France in 1914. Catherine Chupak-Hall is doing the visual work. So we anticipate, if I can get my butt in gear and write the last 2 diary entries for August 2025, that will be the first version. And then we hope to release it in the month of Remembrance in November of 2025. So that's our future piece that's in the works right now. What I'm going to do is, because I've talked quite a bit, I'm going to open it up to John and to Ella to to make sure I didn't forget anything before we show clips.
No, just a few words. It's really been a pleasure to work with Ian and with Ella to have them or help them tell the story that I had written some time ago. What is there any particular point that you want me to address, Ian, in our having worked together?
No, just your ultimate patience with me, John.
No, it's been a pleasure. It really has.
And just as a preface that with everybody who's online tonight, there are two versions that you will see. The Munsee version will be shown first. And again, it's a clip. It's about a 2.5-minute clip, beginning, middle of the story. So it gives you a taste of a taster of the story. I'll be quiet.
Lawate and Aki Waxit, Chechpanakwasowat, Wak Pashiki Tali. Lawate, Iasqua Nikitaakwat, Atmombila, Wak Mashilat Machine, Wak Shuk Quishquat, Kshachan Esh Lab, Wanipakwa. Lunaapeewak Wikawak, Shuk Mata Hweli Wak NEEKAAWA KIHTAACHIIMUWAK Aahaasuwi Wak Kishkwik. NEEKAAWA Wetasamewak Aweyayusak Asand Wak Akihat Kopinam. NEEKAAWA Hweli Haniisawak. Ngwitan Laachumohkawaatwak. Mata Wasikan Wak Mata Niipaahum Pastak. Elya Mata Pishkak. Wama Aweyayusak Wingawalasowak. Kishok Yani Wasalachin Wak Yani Aluma Waakalewi. Shuksakalawit Wak Pishiktalu. Wama Wen Kishawalomwa Tokila Lapi Wak Mata Chechpanakwasiti. Ashkishkwik Wak Chlak Wulak. Shuk El Hweluk Wanakat Wika Chechpanakwasowat Awat. NEEKAAWA Pakinimak Wak Ktamakasowak. NEEKAAWA Maawehleewak. Awen at Lunaape waawehleewak Laachumohkawaatwak. NEEKAAWA Munsee-Delaware Nation. Awen kteekhiikeew NEEKAAWA Kihtaachiimuwak Aki Angwitel Laapeet Iasqua. Naxpii Mata Wawitak Kanj Natachit. NEEKAAWA laachumohkawaatwak Naxpii Kihtaachiimuwak. Ash Aweyayusak maawehleewak Kihtaachiimuwak. Dit wunj Lunaapeewak Luno Shinzoklekiken Alum Shihat Shaya Hwat Kihtaachiimuwak. Wunj Neeka Kteekhiikeew Milan Malakonset Dalton. Ngwitan Kihtaachiimuwak Pakit maawehleewak. It was 10:30 in the evening on Christmas Eve in the tiny house on the Indian reservation. Long ago, when the world was young, it was a very different and much more beautiful place. It was a time long before noisy cars and airplanes, and the only rush you heard was the sound of the wind as it rustled through the leaves in the trees. Human beings lived in this world, but there were not many of them, and they were very different than they are today. Because they lived so close to the animals, rocks, and plants of the forest, they had learned their many languages and could speak with them. One day a most horrid thing happened. The sun did not set, and the moon did not rise. Because of this, there was no nighttime. At first, all the creatures enjoyed themselves. The sun always shined, and the sky was almost always clear and blue. But as time went on, and as beautiful as it was, the creatures found it pretty tiresome to wake up time after time in a world that never changed. Each day was bright as the day before, but because the days never altered, the task of survival became more difficult. As their boredom and hardships increased, the creatures began to mutter. Someone must have done something to have so upset Creator to bring about this change. Of course, each creature blamed the other. Beyond the question of who was to blame, they began to wonder how or whether the world would ever be the same as it had always been. With this uncertainty came a great sense of fear in the world. It was finally decided that there should be a grand council to discuss the matter. Each form of creature was permitted to send one of their kind to attend the great council. So it was that, from among humankind, a man named Glakikon was sent to the first grand council of creation. It is from him that this story was passed down through generations. The time came when the council finally met.
Nishik, Maria, for playing those, because I would have messed up the entire Zoom meeting call. I would not have been able to do that, so I appreciate it. So you get a sort of a sense of the story, both the Munsee version and the English. I was remiss to say that I messed up on the English version quite a bit too, despite it being my first language, because you're reading someone else's story, and sometimes you get a little bit ahead of yourself or you miss a word, where normally that wouldn't be an issue, but when you're actually recording a story, it makes all the difference. So having to go back and correct myself in English was also another task. I wanted to start the story with that first image where you're looking down at the path, because that's one of my favorite paintings that Ella did. So much so that I've got a version of that hanging in a frame in my office, because it reminds me of the story, and it really does highlight that story really nicely. So, but I'll offer the floor to John or Ella.
I don't have anything really to add in particular, unless there are any questions from an author's standpoint that someone might have.
I would ask.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask about the I can't remember the exact word about the first human, or the human representative in the story, and that name and that translation. If you could maybe speak to how where that came from in your storytelling.
Yeah, the name Glakikon came to me from other stories that I had heard as a child growing up. My father was Munsee-Delaware Nation, and some of our in-laws were Chippewa of the Thames, and Glakikon was a hero from some of the old stories that had been passed down to the Chippewa. And so I wanted to honor them by including him in the story.
What if I could add on to that question? John, the story is your story. It's a story you put together and shared with Ian, but it's also reflecting your family stories. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how those two things kind of come together. They're sort of two sides almost of the story in a way.
Well, I can speak to that from the standpoint of having grown up. I've referred to my years growing up. Of course, that was many, many years ago from now. But there was a certain time of year, as most of you will know, when there weren't a lot of things to do outside. So that became the principal time of the year where storytelling was most important time of the year. Some of the stories that we heard were simply for entertaining value to kind of keep us kids. We didn't have TV, we didn't have movies to go to, but we had storytelling. And other stories, most of them really, were an attempt to try to teach through storytelling life lessons that each of us would have to hold on to as we grew up. And one of the things in this story that I was trying to convey was that, as I started at the outset saying that one of the most important things that we have is our understanding or knowledge of our selves and our worth as a link in the chain of life. Well, John in this story is kind of going through that with the loss of his mother. And it's important for him to understand, and he comes to realize that as the story unfolds, that his mother hasn't lost as long as he keeps her close. And it's that principle or life lesson that I was hoping to convey through the story, that we're all connected. Those who went before, those who are now, and those who are yet to come.
Kolmosi, Niipaahum. I'm here in Wisconsin by the Green Bay Packers, the best American football team. Just really happy to see all Lunaape relatives here. And in my day job, we're fighting, for our treaty rights and our sovereign rights down here, and try to use culture and language every day, sunrise, sunset ceremony, being able to sit here. So thank you for pulling this together. Sitting here eating supper with my man and my dog, enjoying life, and just thankful for a lot of things in what's really become an increasingly dangerous and complex world. Nothing we haven't seen before. And so really relying on John, you were sort of sharing some of the things that as I do, I work a lot in philosophy and policy and sort of shaping systems and about how the world, academia in particular, should be thinking about systems and change and transformation and the ethics and values behind, whether it's in health systems, education systems, climate change, stuff like that. And so what I really long for I really appreciate you sort of breaking down what you were trying to convey in this story. I wish we had a space to sort of learn about the philosophy of the Lenape people or the indigenous paradigm, so we don't have to sit in a Western paradigm all the time with how we conceptualize and think about things. When you were talking about the present, the past, and the future, the kinship of the Lenape, like I'm really interested in those, and really our values and ethics around that, so I can deepen my knowledge and experience and ceremony around that as we sort of have to walk in these academic spaces, so I just wanted to sort of call that out and say how much I appreciate you sort of breaking that down for us, because we don't get to talk about that a lot, and I know when parts of the story hit us just the right way, it's for lots of different reasons, I'm sure, and some of it is going, yes, that's Lenape kinship, or yes, that's Lenape ethics, and being able to bring that forward in the way that we carry it and walk with it as our medicine in the world is really something that, I find why I continue to be drawn to this, including for all you linguists out there, which I do not claim to be. I've been practicing our language for more than 2 decades, almost 3, under Chokalila, and then under Karen. And so, these are just really important ways to heal and to keep trying to move that good work forward. I don't conjugate verbs well in English, so, you know, I need all the help I can get. That's all I can say. And once in a while, you guys could give us some sassy things to say so we can be funny and sassy in Lenape, not just English. That's what Glenn used to do. Anyways, much love from Wisconsin, from your favorite cheesehead.
Nikki, you could say achma. Achma is not even.
Not even. Glenn
Not
told
even.
me. Glenn told
Achma.
me. Achma. Glenn said I asked him how to say I asked him about my clan, and he said, what cheesel. That means the big cheese. So I guess that's as close as I can come being a cheesehead. That's my one joke I got. I need more.
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you for sharing that. That was great. And the artwork was beautiful. If we wanted to see or hear the rest of the story, how could we do that?
Ian, were you thinking about allowing that to be posted along with the recording of Munsee Story Evening, or will that be posted somewhere else, or what will be the way that will be shared?
Yeah, we're sort of going through that process as a community in terms of how to share things. So whether that's, I know there's talk about actually revamping bringing the Munsee website back from wherever it went to an actual, a place where I think it makes sense to host certain things from language perspective, history and culture as well, right? So there's conversation about that. But yeah, currently it resides on my computer. John has access, Ella has access, and we share it when we can for sure. But that's sort of that long-term piece that requires more minds than just my own in terms of what should we do, right? What's the logical and safe way to host things that are important to the community. So there's no short answer, Stephanie. I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You know what? I really do appreciate it. It was really nice.
Yeah, thanks.
I've got a question for Ella. Could you tell us a little bit about how you went about creating the illustrations from the story?
For me, we worked with Learning Bird, like Ian said, and they gave me the English script, if that's the right wording I'm using, that John had, and we went through it on a Zoom meeting, and we just planned out how many pages they wanted to do, and then we went through like what stood out in the story that seemed like it would make the most sense to highlight. And that's kind of where I started, and then it kind of took off from there.
Anishik.
Yeah, I love the way you take the point of view, these different points of view. So you have this real sense of kind of moving through the forest as the story unfolds. Anybody else? I noticed that Brent shared something which is really important, and I'm happy to see that there an announcement for people who are looking for an opportunity for some language learning. Kristin is still doing online classes on Thursday evenings through the end of April. And so there's a little bit of information on that in the chat for those who would like it. If nobody else has comments or things, I wonder if the presenters would like to say anything else as we close off, and maybe also thinking toward the future. Ian said a little bit about ongoing language work and preparing the book that tells the story of his relative, his great uncle, right? Ian, and maybe thinking toward the future and things that people might like to see, and ways that language work in particular, but other kinds of community work can be well supported. I don't know if there's anything that comes to mind, or if that's a conversation to sort of carry forward as we continue.
Like able to just think in Lenape, like I remember when I was learning Spanish years ago, I could actually start thinking in it, not fluently, but like, are you guys at a place where you can do that?
I could say yes, that it's starting to happen. Or there's words that come out that I don't know the meaning of. One example was we planned to bring our stuffies to class one day, and they were all supposed to come to class with a stuffy. And when I walked in, they were sitting there and nobody had a stuffy in their hand. And I said, Judge, or what was it? Wunjiiyayuwak. And wunjiiyayuwak means they're all empty-handed. But I had no idea what that meant. And I told them that because they know that I'm still, I'm still learning our language too. And if I don't know what a word is, then we go and look it up. So we went and looked it up, and it meant they're empty-handed.
That's awesome.
Or just like little phrases will be like first instinct over English. But I think it helps, having to teach 4 or 5 classes of it a day. Like it's just constantly always there. And I also feel like that like our language is only like a generation or so away from us. Like we only lost it like my parents' generation. I don't know how many speakers in Raventown we had in that generation, but their parents were the generation where there were still a lot of speakers. So I feel like it just has to be woken up. Like the more you spend with it, the more you speak it, share it, like listen to it, that just like English, like that's how it was as a baby. Everything we heard is in English, like everything we see on the TV, like we just have to really get a chance to immerse ourselves completely in it. And that's really hard to do these days because we don't have 2 speakers in a household raising their children yet. Eotch.
Yeah.
But I hope so. I really hope I see it in my lifetime. I hate to say it like that, but I really hope to see families speaking.
I'm reminded of something Ian said a little bit earlier about the rhythms of the language and the way it would have been spoken by that generation of your grandparents you were mentioning, Kristin, when it was every day in the household and it was natural and it was, I'm reminded of sometimes in the past, people have talked a little bit about recordings that were made in the late 1960s up through about, I guess, 1970, and then some later ones of fluent speakers in the community. And it's so important to think about ways to make those kinds of recordings available to people who are second language learners, who are reawakening language in the way you were just talking about, Kristin, because I can't help but think that hearing those rhythms of speech is probably a really important part of the reawakening. That might be something maybe again that the community website, as that comes into being, that might be something that could be hosted in a way that's accessible for community.
I don't really have any more to say. I'm just was interested in hearing what's going on in terms of the language from all the different areas. I'm kind of like I just know bits and pieces from a political perspective, and the work that Kristin and Diane did, and all the years that they spent the summers at Lakehead. So no, I'm quite aware of what's been going on in our community. And I know that we had talked about one time, hopefully getting to conversational language amongst the community. So I'm just here to participate, listen, and learn.
Just one question. I saw somebody put some online classes. Are there very many online classes? Because I'd love to. I'm way here in the West Coast, way out of any kind of traditional territory or homelands or anything. And I don't know if there's any other Delaware on the West Coast, but it'd be great to connect online and to be able to learn and have like just little language groups, conversation groups. If there's anybody organizing that, I would love to sign up, but I just don't know where to go yet. This is my very first anything to do with Lunaape, and it feels good, but I want to learn more, but I just don't know where to go.
This sounds like a Kristin and Ian question.
So we do Munsee language classes on Thursday nights through Zoom, and it's open to all of our Delaware communities. I'm from Delaware Nation. My dad is from Delaware Nation, and my mom is from Munsee.
Anybody else? Any closing remarks? I don't know if John, you might want to finish things up for us tonight.
Yeah, for me, it's been an honor and a privilege to have spent the time working with Ian and with Ella, and to share with folks that were with us this evening. It's been a real pleasure for me. Thank you. Anishik.
Aanihkwaachiimuwak.